Hello and welcome to Phil Goes Deep. On today's show, or tonight's show, depending where you're watching from, we've got a very special guest and we're going to be focusing on a particular subject which is, I won't say close to my heart, but something I'm quite interested in, something that I think is often described as the gift that keeps on giving. Okay, so something about ATF, automated testing. But if anyone's messed around with that on ServiceNow, you know that it might take a little while to get things set up and running. So this tool, this application that we're going to be focusing on is brought by one of my fellow dev MVPs from ServiceNow, and it's going to be, I think, helping make that process a whole lot easier. So I'm going to bring the guest in now, and I'm hoping that if I've got it right, that we'll actually hear him. So let me just cut this over. Just setting that up. And don't forget, if you're tuned in and you're not subscribed, click subscribe and click like and tell all your friends. Right, I've got Paul Morris on the screen. Can we hear you, Paul? Oh, something's going wrong. Hold on. I can hear you. Let me check. Right, okay, so I've changed something. Should be speak now. Oh, now I can't hear you. So try now.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Right, I think we've got you. Apologies. Sorry to the viewers. Sorry to you, Paul. We didn't do the final checks just before we went live. We were talking too much about the good stuff. So just say one more time. Hello, testing 1, 2.
Hello, testing 1, 2.
Perfect. Right, we've got you. Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry
beautiful.
Well, thanks for joining.
Wonderful.
Thanks for joining us, me, and
My
thanks
pleasure.
for coming on the channel. So do you want to do a quick intro? Introduce yourself?
Yep, sure. Well, while we're sort of talking about automated testing today, my whole, I guess, real passion for ServiceNow in general came from going to the Knowledge 14 conference. That was when we used to have big international conferences where thousands of people would get together, and it was great, and there was no pandemic, no diseases, no nothing. It was just a fantastic get together. I was just so amazed by how many different people were there and the different ideas. I was kind of there on an assignment to learn more about automated testing. So back in 2014, there was no ATF. Automated testing was something that not very many people did, and I wanted to find out more about it. I was just walking around the expo floor, talking to all the really big players at the time, the big ServiceNow partners, which back then I guess was like Fruition, which I think have been sold and bought multiple times since they were Fruition. Just seeing how everyone's doing automated testing, just getting ideas. There were some vendors that were making automated testing apps as well that hadn't yet been released. So it was really cool to learn about that. So after my assignment, I kind of built my own automated testing tool that was very crude, and then came back a couple of years later. I think it might have even been Knowledge 15 the next year in Vegas to present on it. And there were 3 presentations in total at the whole conference on automated testing. There was one that was run by ServiceNow, and there was one that was run by another guy, I can't remember his name, and then there was myself, and there was real excitement about automated testing. Next thing you know, ServiceNow had released their own automated testing framework, and was in the middle of writing one for the App Store as well. So I actually released the first automated testing application in the ecosystem just before ServiceNow's ATF. But ATF was so good compared to what I could do. The project was kind of canned from there. But I still kept being interested in the automated testing framework, and there were some features that ATF didn't have that my application did have that they eventually released. And I thought there were the biggest feature that I never made that ServiceNow still haven't made was the ability to record tests, because there is a bit of investment involved with creating ATF tests if anyone's given it a go. It does take time. It saves time in the long run, but it takes time to initially set it up. And with my understanding of the platform, I was pretty sure I could build a sort of crude tool to do the recording. And as I kind of went deeper and deeper into it, there were all kinds of technical challenges that just came up that I never expected. And it ended up being a lot harder than I thought it would be. But I eventually got something that was usable, and then started putting it up on the ServiceNow share site. And I'd gotten to a point where I'd invested so much time in it. I thought, everyone seems to be going to crowdfunding these days. Due to the nature of the application, you couldn't really go on the ServiceNow store because it requires a lot of API that you just can't use on the store, and a lot of restrictions that you just can't get past unless you're in a global app. So I just thought I'd just stick it up on Patreon, and maybe a few passionate people will help support me, and spun up a website as well. And the Patreon pretty much just funds the web hosting costs. But I'm not doing it for money. I'm doing it because I like doing it, and I like helping other people get the most out of ATF and the most out of ServiceNow as well. And I pretty much built it for me, really. And if other people can get use out of it as well, that's great.
Well, there's a lot to kind of unpick there.
Yes.
So I was thinking, right, when did ATF come out? Was it Istanbul or Jakarta?
Yes, it was Istanbul, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So and it's been kind of getting love every release, right? They've added new features in. One of the things they've done is release like quick start tests, and they're bundled into the applications now. So that takes some of the pain away of getting you started, right? But it's not quite, if you wanted to do your own journey from scratch, that's where, you can copy it. But I think from what I've seen, and I've only played with, so the application that we're going to focus on today is called Regress ATF Recorder, right?
Yeah.
I've downloaded it from Share. It is free. I did see a Patreon thing at the top and shout you a coffee, and I have to be honest, I haven't bought you a coffee yet, so maybe I owe you a coffee.
That's okay.
But it looks great, and I kind of feel like it's. I'll compare it to. I used to work at one point in kind of a VBA world, right? Automating Office applications, Visual Basic for applications, I think it's called. So before you started just writing code, you'd click record macro, go through all the keystrokes that you needed to do to achieve your end result, and then go back and tweak the code, right? And it would just get you started, and you've got the baseline. You don't necessarily know the methods that are needed to do those things, but then you can go in and plug variables in and everything else. So that's the kind of thing that I see it as. It's quite similar to that. It's like a macro recorder for the platform.
Yeah, that's it. And it doesn't necessarily do everything for you. You still got to add some bits and pieces in. It's not super intelligent that it captures absolutely every little thing. But what I really wanted was to take like 95% of the work of tedious creating like all the little test steps. I wanted 95% of that to go away.
Yeah.
So there's only 5% left basically. And I think I pretty much got there.
And it's
close to 95% maybe.
I saw a review. I did a little stream last night just on something completely different, and just mentioned that we were going to be doing this. And when I was trying to find it, I couldn't remember the exact website, but I think it's regress-atf-recorder.com.
Yeah.
Jace.pro, on Jace Benson's website, jace.pro, he actually did a review of it, and that was back in April last year. So when did you kind of first release this out into share? It's version 1.4 now?
Yeah, it's been there for a few years, I think, actually.
Okay.
Um, I've just been kind of chipping away at it over time, and it was only maybe 3 or 4 months ago I thought I'm gonna do a nice looking website. Um, I saw inspired from SNU Tools just had like a really simple, clean website. I'm like, I just want something like that because it's cool, looks
Yeah.
cool. And I haven't done any web development for ages, so let's just put something up quickly, see what I can come up with.
So what I wanted to check as well was like we got a good backstory there, a bit about yourself, a bit about how you got into ServiceNow, and the knowledge conferences that used to take place in person, and maybe fingers crossed they come back one day. But
Yeah,
that's a
they are
long.
coming back
They're coming back, right? It's a long old
next
journey
year.
for you though. Long old journey because that
Uh,
accent is not local, right? You're in Australia.
yes,
So you native Australian? You've been there, like,
yes,
yeah, born and bred.
yes. My dad is from Wales, and I have many cousins from England. I do often get mistaken for being English for some reason, probably because I'm so white.
Okay.
But that would be my dad's side being from Wales. So I've got his white complexion. I think I'm whiter than him somehow.
There's not a lot of sun in Wales. So
Yeah.
why? So I was going to say, why is this needed? But I think we kind of covered that. It's painful to get started, but how did you approach this? How's the thing built, or should we just get into it? Should we start to see the tool,
Yeah.
take a look at it, and I can just ask you some questions from there? So I
I
haven't.
think it first started when I knew there was API and G_form to check if stuff was mandatory and like read only. It's not in the public reference, but it's there. So I thought, oh, well, if I can do that, I can just reverse engineer ATF. So, and like ServiceNow has so many code snippets that are public, including the test steps. Also, that code, that client-side code was also there. So I was like, no, I'll just what I don't can't work out myself, I'll just reverse engineer. So whatever ATF is doing to check, I'll just do that. And that's
Well,
kind of how I built half of it.
so I like I say, I've installed it and I've created one smooth test. Like, click here, create a record, submit it, something like that. And then I just took a quick look at, okay, it's created the test steps. But I have not looked at how that's actually happening. So yeah, we didn't check also that you've got permission to share on Zoom. Have I allowed you that? And also, shout to Casey for the stickers, right? sndevs.slack.com. Yes. So if you're wondering, that's the Slack logo. I've got it managed to get it stuck to my microphone. So have you got
Yes.
permissions to share? Yeah.
Now yeah, I've got a share screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, I've got to make you host. Okay, hold on. This is my bad.
Like I'm taking over
Make host.
the airwaves.
It's all good. You should be a host now, and you should be able to share.
Oh yes, here we go. There's a bit of a plug there. My website.
Excellent. Well, we drop that. I think it's in the description on YouTube actually.
Oh, that's great.
Mark Rufoff's on the line as well. He's in the chat. Shout to Mark. Sorry, I didn't check back on the chat. He can hear us both. That's good to know because we're 15 minutes in now. If he said I can't hear you, or I can only hear Phil, that would be disappointing. So.
Yeah. So I guess Phil, you were talking about the version you were looking at was just the one on share. The one on Patreon, I've just added a couple extra features. I think I've got the email notification capture feature. So that was another thing I was thinking of. Like, there are system logs that capture all the emails why don't I just look at the email log after the test and then generate test steps based on that?
So this is
Um,
for customers that are kind of like they want to test their emails, but the emails aren't really getting triggered in test, or if they are, they go into a group mailbox somewhere and they're hidden. So the kind of end user that's doing the testing. So is there
well, I
already a
guess
test step
it's
for confirming that an email was generated? Because I don't know ATF as
yeah,
well as I should.
yeah. So I can't remember what version. A couple of versions ago, maybe they just added a test step for checking if um, emails have been sent, and you can do a variety of different things, like check the subject line has certain words, check the body has certain words, check that it was triggered by a particular notification. And as a developer, most of the time, what I've personally been using ATF for is for testing my deployments. If I've got a fairly sizable update, if I've changed lots of different things, and I want to make sure it works in test or pre-prod or however many environments you have, it takes a bit of time to test all these things over and over again, each environment, and you might not have a tester able to do it. And I just wanted to be able to go commit update set, run test, and then confirm that the deployment has worked.
I think
So I basically
that's
built,
all we want. That's what we all want. That's all we.
yeah, built this app because as a developer, I wanted to be easier to make those ATF tests in the first place.
Excellent.
Make
So
my job a lot easier.
so there's extra features behind Patreon. So Patreon
Yes.
is an area I don't know it. I keep seeing it on certain people's sites. So um, there's what you sign into Patreon and then you're like a premium subscriber to your channel on there.
Yeah. Yeah. So from there, I can post privately where I just upload the newest version, just the update set XML file. And I haven't updated since I did my last release, but I just have a poll of what features you want to see next. And I put a bunch of features that I thought would probably, they're mostly just things I would like to do at some stage if I had the time or the motivation, hoping that the Patreon does give me the time and motivation. Um, so the thing that got voted the most, I've only done one release, been a bit busy, but the last feature that was asked for most was a test step for creating a user and impersonating them. So you might, since I'm sharing my screen, if I go and try and create just quickly, just creating a test normally, usually you start off by impersonating someone. Every good test starts with an impersonation.
And that's one of the challenges, right? Is that you build your ATFs based on these test users that might not really exist, or you're not testing it clean. So you do need to be able to make sure that you've got a user with specific roles to make sure your tests are clean. You're not picking up any permissions from somebody else.
You get this message here from ServiceNow. Impersonating an existing user may cause unexpected behavior for the test. Avoid potential issues by adding create user step instead. So
that's a ServiceNow warning, is it?
That's a ServiceNow warning. I haven't come across any major issues doing impersonate, but that's what
the issues I've had is where
I've
created test users, right? Sorry, so you created a test user for the purposes of testing, and then obviously it goes up to prod. The test user doesn't, and then it comes back down after a clone, and that user's not there anymore. That's I think where the breakage.
Yeah, and as that message is there, but it was never a problem for me. The main thing was kind of what you're saying is you want to remove dependencies on data where possible. So in 6 months' time, if you don't have those users or groups or configuration items or what have you, in this case, users, you don't have to worry about it because it just creates a throwaway user on the fly and then discards it. So that was the the last feature that I put in by vote. I need to put up the next poll to get an idea on what feature people want in next. But
Do you know how many people are
let's
using in the app? How many downloads you've had, or how many kind of?
on share, I think it's like 300, 400 or something. The Patreon's been pretty. I've got a very small loyal base, let's say, of followers. I haven't really had time recently to be promoting it. Maybe tonight we'll get some extra fans. We'll
Well,
we'll
we've
have to
got.
wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who else is tuning in. Shout out to Ashley, Ashley SN. I can see Ashley's in the chat as well. But it looks like we're running. You know, I don't want to give numbers away, but I'm sure if you're watching it, you can see there's about five people tuned in. So whether they're all
5 potential Patreons.
potentially, yeah, exactly. So I think developers
Cool.
can really see the power of this as well, because one of the things I've tried to do with customers is talk to them about investing in ATF in terms of we've built a story, right, and that's the estimate for the complexity to actually deliver the story. But should we also put a little bit of extra time in to actually build or maintain the ATF steps? And then, like I said, it's the gift that keeps on giving. You put that into production, and when they clone or upgrade, this would take a lot of that effort out of it, right?
Yeah, or it definitely does speed that up a lot. So I haven't yet run through an example of it.
Let's see it.
So
let's see it. So
let's go through an example.
let's see it. We've got David Huang on the line as well. So shout out to David. He's also
So,
at some point from Australia, but now more on my time zone. So he's watching it on his lunch break, I guess.
so it sounds like a plan. So one other thing that the Patreon subscribers do get is a guided setup, because there is, especially if you want to use this for your catalog items, there is a bit of setup that's required. And I also kind of turned it into a bit of a tutorial as well. So they found a blog post on the community that showed how you can create your own guided setups, because you can, but you have to change some ACLs to let you do it. It's just one of those things where it makes me you think, like, why isn't this just available out of the box for everyone to use? Why do you have to modify some ACLs? I've got a share app as well that just creates the ACLs for you, that lets you make your own guided setup. So for those that might think it's a bit daunting to set up, especially if you want to use it for Service Portal, for the Patreon subscribers, I've got a full guided setup that takes you through all the steps that you have to do, and then all the optional ones. Like if you want to enable access for non-admins, that's doable as well. So I do have a colleague that was using this to do upgrades, and they just had a process coordinator who wasn't an admin, just go through and use this app to create tests in preparation for an upgrade. So there's lots of stuff you can do here, but it guides you through how to set it up for Service Catalog, and how to go through and create your own test, and how you can show your support as well and testing catalog items and such. But once again, I digress. So I might just start off by just going to the properties and just talking about some of this.
This is a record producer, right? It's not properties as we might expect.
Indeed, this is a record producer in disguise. So again, I got this idea. I think I might have got it from Mark even. I can't remember. I think it was another MVP, or just posted like a random, this is a random idea. Like you could create your own UI page, but I was a bit lazy. Not very good at Jelly. So I thought I'll just use a record producer, because that's already got like all the form controls that I want, like checkboxes, drop downs.
So is it system properties behind this?
Yeah, there's system properties behind this. So this is just the user interface for system properties, because the system property interface isn't very intuitive,
Because the
user
first thing that
friendly.
struck me actually was that there's a dependency. I think when you change, you tick something. It might be the enable. When you disable it, a load of the options disappear. So
Yeah. So I built it on this idea that there's kind of three different degrees that you might want to capture things in a test. So I've got three predefined recording levels. So firstly is actions only, when you don't care about the fields or anything like that. You just want to kind of go through a bunch of actions and you don't really care what UI actions are visible, what fields are visible along the way. So this one just kind of records actions, which is for a Patreon feature here, recording of all outbound emails that are sent. And oh, that's just an extra setting because funnily enough, as I was building this functionality, I found that the actual test steps to do outbound emails have too many bugs in Paris. So
okay.
I just ended up using record query instead to look at the notification tables. That's why I've got that setting there. Anyway, I digress. Simple was the one I used the most that just kind of captures the anomalies. For example, it only cares when fields are not visible when they're read-only or when they're mandatory, rather than just capturing every single field that's visible on the form. Same with variables as well.
So
It
does it
only cares a
capture?
bit.
Just sorry, Paul. Does it capture then when it's going along, and it looks at a form and it says, okay, short description on an incident is mandatory. So
Yeah,
therefore, when I'm on that form recording my ATF, it takes the state and assumes that that's what it's trying to assert as a value in the test. So it will say that's mandatory. It should be mandatory.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So anything that's mandatory will get sucked up and there'll be a test step created for it. And then exhaustive, this is the full regression. Everything imaginable is captured. It's a crazy, crazy level of detail. It's good for upgrades. If you want to make sure, or at least you want to know any tiny little change has happened, this is going to pick it up because it's checking everything.
Does it pick up
Visible,
on
not
the
visible.
menus that you click on the left? So you go to the menu, click it on the left. Does it check that they're visible, or because
So I
that's a
haven't
kind of
built anything around that. It's mostly about all about the forms. It's
okay?
more of a form snapshot tool that
The
supports
journey to take the
catalog item
records.
forms. Sorry?
So it's like the journey that you're going through. So if you're trying to take a record from, you know, through its life cycle, what
Yeah,
state is that form in as it goes through the life cycle?
yeah, exactly. So we're talking about forms a bit. So let's go simple. I'll show everyone this use create new user test step when impersonating. I should mention as well, I do have custom, which just lets you pick whatever you want.
Okay.
So we might go custom just so I can show off the features that are in the Patreon version and show the kind of most basic level of recording. So we'll just save this. There's some other options in there as well. Might come back to them later. So I'll just submit that record producer and it's updated all those system properties. So let's just start recording.
So we've got a bit going on in the chat here. Ashley's saying, yeah, the biggest thing holding folks back from using ATF is that initial time to set up, and really looks like Regress can speed that up. Mark was asking, what do you like? What's your level in terms of how much you usually capture with ATF? Because you could keep your test pretty basic, or you could go through and go nuts, checking every field in its
Yeah,
behavior. But I think there's maybe a slight latency between the chat and what we're talking about, because then obviously you covered the exhaustive, right? It's everything, nuts and bolts.
yeah, yeah. Exhaustive for upgrades, simple for like your little user stories. You just want to deploy it to test and make sure that the basics are all there.
But would is it easier to start with exhaustive and then go into your test and delete everything out, or is it easier to go in and start with basic and then add a few things in? What do you think is the?
I think I would go with simple pretty much all the time, unless I'm building tests specifically for an upcoming upgrade, or you need, for whatever reason, you need to be super, super specifics. So I recently used exhaustive as an example. I have a customer with customer service management, and
Okay.
we just started using case types. So we needed to migrate cases into two different case types. And one of the case types had to be identical to the way case already was. All the fields, all the UI actions, everything needed to be identical, which meant we had to copy all the UI actions. Pretty much everything had to go up to this new table layer. So before I created the new case type, I did an exhaustive test on case, and then I just changed the table to the new case type I created and ran the test. And it instantly showed me there were like two fields that were read-only before and suddenly weren't read-only. And I probably never would have caught it
No.
with manual testing. And I instantly got feedback on it immediately. And when we did eventually go into production,
your test failed basically.
yeah, the test failed immediately. So we were pretty much able to get the new case type like for like because of the exhaustive test. But you might not always want to do that, because the more level of detail you capture, the harder it is to maintain that test. Because one little thing changes that might be acceptable,
Yeah.
your test fails, and it could fail early as well.
Yeah. So I think this is going to depend on the audience, right? Who's doing the testing and that level of specificity, because I know even without take automated testing away, you could ask the same question in testing, right? If you're doing it manually, how granular,
Yeah.
how specific do you want to be? What's important, what's acceptable? And that's what I was kind of asking about the menu items as well, because I've seen that come up in some test cases in the past. Organizations have said, these are the menu items. And yeah, I guess you don't know what you don't know, but sometimes you do get additional menu items that come in that you weren't expecting, and that can throw
Yeah.
people out, right? So I
Well,
don't know
that's
how
probably
you can,
not a bad idea for, I might add that to the feature backlog. Just something, what I probably would do, it wouldn't track what you're doing because it's kind of too difficult,
yeah,
to be honest. But I could probably, just by reverse engineering how ServiceNow checks the visibility, just build a big script that just says what's the current state of my menu and
yeah,
just put it in a test.
snapshot the menus that you can see
Yeah,
under
and
that
maybe
role.
give the ability to pick some top level ones, or so you could just say impersonate a user, just say generate a test based on what the menu is now, and that gives you that kind of regression snapshot.
Stick it on
Really
the
good for upgrades.
Stick it on the backlog. You heard it here first, folks.
Yep.
It's coming in the
It's
next
on the
release.
backlog.
It's on the roadmap now. It's next release or something. Safe harbor and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah. Yes, definitely a very, very safe harbor there.
Got a shout out
So
to Drew as well. Drew's on. So shout to Drew. Thanks for tuning in. And David's also asked, is recording ATF on the portal possible? I kind of know the answer to this, but I'd like you to talk on that one.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I will come to that in a moment. So we're just talking about just general form usage before. So let's actually start seeing some results.
So you clicked start recording. I watched you do it. We didn't kind of narrate on it, but you clicked start recording, and now we see that message in the top, right?
So I've made favorites of all of them. But in the menu, you can start recording using whatever default option you set in the settings, or you can just go straight to the free modes I talked about, the actions only, simple and exhaustive. And we're using a custom setting, which is simple plus the Patreon features.
Okay.
So we've got our incident here. I think it's completely out of the box. So I'm just going to save it. It's just letting me know that it's added a snapshot to the test, a form snapshot added to test. My pre-generated test is over here. Just in the description, it just kind of tells me everything, the recording level I used when I recorded it, what version it was recording on, and just an output of what I was using in the settings. So it was capturing all emails. I'm not capturing as part of the kind of simple settings. It doesn't capture fields that are changed by scripts. It only captures read-only, mandatory, and hidden. It only captures visible UI actions, and it only captures non-mandatory, editable, visible, reading. Those for the variable states.
So this is
Anyway,
a summary of what you're going to capture. It's not actually. Oh, it's got some steps in there yet, because you've not stopped recording, right? You've just saved the incident, and this is what you've got so far.
Yeah. So just this far, it's created a user based on me, my first name, second name, last. It's basically taken most of the fields in my user record and pumped it into this new record, including the roles. So those I've got admin, so it's just giving me admin, and those are the groups that I'm in. So it's trying to replicate me as close as possible without being me. It knows that I've opened a new form. It's done the submit, resolve, save, create work order. And this is stuff that a human could probably never pull off as well, because it looks at every UI action that's there, that's visible.
Yeah, you'd have to go into the form.
From every menu.
Create test in the other window and go, that should be there, that should be there, that shouldn't be there, but at this point in time, and then move forward and check the next thing and check.
Yeah, there are some limitations there around what it can and can't do due to, I tried to reverse engineer whatever I can, but unfortunately, a bunch of these UI actions are client side, and there's absolutely no reference in the HTML for those objects that can be tied to a UI action. They have alternative hidden objects in the HTML, but it's just not possible to link them together. Not everything can be reverse engineered, unfortunately, but I've reverse engineered what I can, which is most of them. So I think I've got
what UI actions is that? Sorry, is it the right click context menu on the burger menu, or is it the client callable ones of them?
Yeah, so it's any UI action that's in the context menu that's client callable. I can't reverse engineer it. Never worked out a way to be able to do it. But for everything else, it's there, which is most things. So,
so is that tunable? Yeah, can you say like where your UI actions are? Does it care about that? Does it say, oh, that's a form one, that's a related link?
No, it's the test step out of the box is just I think the only one is UI action visibility. It doesn't
care where it is. It just says it's visible.
Yeah, all it cares about is visibility.
I guess that's actually all you need, right? If it doesn't matter where you can see it, because you might be in 2 or 3 places or just one.
Yeah, I also added helpful notes there that kind of tell you what's going on as well. So you see that step there. It says create and impersonate temporary user based on user who was recorded, which is me. And then it tells me the incident that I used to create, or the incident that was created for this one. It's more handy when you're opening existing records as well, and just some of the bleeding obvious UI actions that were visible during the recording, the fields that were populated, the field state, UI action clicked by user, that kind of thing. So that in itself probably would have taken 15 minutes to do, at least manually.
At least.
That was just completely instant.
And or you might have copied it from some other test or quick start test, but then you've still got to spend 15 minutes going through it and rejigging it effectively.
Yeah. So personally, I just go with this. Another example, maybe let's change the impact and the urgency on this one. Work notes has become mandatory. Put in a work note as well.
At
save
what
this
point does it
one.
write the test? At what point is it kind of recording? Is it recording
So
every click or?
it's whenever you submit a form in any way, whether it's a save or whatever, it's essentially taking a snapshot of the form. I thought it would just be a lot easier from like a application architecture point of view to do it when you're submitting actions. Because you, again, like you could change urgency and then change it back, and it hasn't actually changed it.
So it doesn't
It's
care.
only really
You're not checking that
saving.
1 × 1 is 1. It's not doing any of that validation because you haven't submitted it. But at the point of
Yeah,
submitting it, it's testing that.
yeah. So I did think another thing I was going to put on the backlog ages ago is to have something that lets you take a snapshot like whenever you want. So you could just do like a category and a subcategory change or an impact and an urgency change. And then maybe there would be something here in the menu that says like take snapshot. But when I was making this, I didn't want to impact on the integrity of the test that was being recorded. I didn't want to have any footprint on the recording because then it would pick it up in the recording that it exists. So I wanted to make it as separate as possible. So like the view test and stop, they're just URLs. I didn't want to put any UI action in here. I wanted to make it as clean as
I see
possible.
what you mean. Yeah, if you put, right, I'm with you. So if you put a UI action on there, it's going to test for that UI action that's only there because you've got regress running.
Yeah. So what did I just do here? Open existing record. So where I did the set field values, where I say impact, urgency, and work notes, and you can see it's picked up there that work notes is mandatory and that the record has been saved.
Should it be
So
confirming there? Why does it not confirm? Just curious. You went impact 1, urgency 1, and the priority is 1, but it didn't. It's not showing that in the field state validation.
It's a good question. So the reason why that is because I'm using the simple level of recording,
Okay,
in which I arbitrarily decided that you don't always want to know fields that have changed by scripts. So I just disabled that in the simple one. But if we go, because we're talking about this custom. So I can go and enable that and re-record it.
No, it's fine. I was just checking. Like, this is configurable. It is possible. It's just not on this because you've gone for simple plus the Patreon step. So
yeah,
I guess I'm just conscious of time, Paul. Should we see those Patreon features and the portal?
Yes, that sounds like a good idea. So I'll just quickly show. I just stopped the test just then.
Okay.
And it's just added to the end that it's picked up that while I was recording, there was one email that was sent off. It was an email with subject incident, blah, 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 has been opened on your behalf that was sent during the recording. And then I just mentioned here that there's currently an issue with validate outbound email triggered from notification. That's why it's just a record query, but it just looks at the record created in step 12, which is got from the last UI action. Step 12, click UI action, target table, who it was sent to. I think I've just got email recipients, and it looks at the notification that triggered it.
So it's not just emails that were triggered while you were recording, it's emails that were triggered related to the record.
Because there's all kinds of stuff that gets sent in ServiceNow that you don't care about.
Yeah.
I figure all you really care about is the record that you've recorded. Otherwise, it's just noise. Focusing purely on that.
What if it threw an event and the notification was tied to the event?
I do cover events as well. It just doesn't look at a notification. So it's looking at sys email log table.
Yep.
So whatever fields are on there, I think sys email log has reference to an event as well. Notification. Yeah, event. So I do, my code in the back end will look at events as well, but there weren't any events in this particular case.
So it's possible to connect
But
notifications.
it can do that.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. I mean, I'm throwing swerve balls at you, Paul, and you're catching them all. So
works with works with Flow as well. Notifications triggered by Flow. It also picks that up as well.
Excellent. This is
that was a little more difficult to reverse engineer.
So
do we want to go to catalog then?
Yeah, because so there were some questions going on in the chat, and David said is recording on the portal possible. Mohammed obviously is using Regress, knows it quite well because he said it's possible using service catalogs on. Yes, it's possible. Service catalogs on Service Portal need to add a variable set UI scripts that comes as part of this utility, and you are good to go. And then he said instructions are available on the utility page in ServiceNow Share. And then I think Mark's trying to throw some swerve balls at you and saying, what about virtual agents?
No.
Not yet. That's on the backlog.
Yeah. I have a day job as well.
Well, he said it's also.
Let's not get too crazy here.
It's not available out of the box, so it's not like you could go and reverse engineer it from there if it's not currently available on the baseline stuff.
Where if there's not currently a test step for it, there's probably a good reason why there isn't, because it's difficult to reverse engineer.
Just before you go into Portal, actually, shout out to Rukmini. Thanks for tuning in. She has asked us, is it possible to record related lists? So while we're in that form view, and obviously we're checking UI actions are possible, are we able to check the related lists are there visible? Maybe checking what UI actions are on the list, maybe checking that there's
maybe
data.
That's another backlog thing. So that's, I guess, the missing 5%.
Okay.
You can generate all the stuff I showed you quite quickly, but then the related list, that's the stuff, the little bits you have to do manually.
But you would go in, you'd do your recording, you'd go through the journey that you're trying to prove, and then you just intercept, like at that relevant point, add in a test step for the related list, right?
Yeah, that's it. You just insert the test step where you need to put it in, basically. So most of it's there, but not everything is there. There's so many test steps that are available now, and I've got a list of what test steps are and are not supported on the share page that you can have a look at. But there's so very many now. As with each version, they just come up with more and more stuff.
And it's possible to create your own as well, right? I remember creating one.
Yes, you can.
2 or 3 years ago, and it was to avoid that impersonate issue. So I selected I specified the role. So I said select a user with this role, rather than, I never thought about creating a user. I said get a user with this role, but not one with admin. Okay, so admin doesn't count. And try and find that. It solved the problem for me at the time. But yeah, I guess every time you add a custom test in there, then someone would have to do something on Regress to go and access it. Yeah,
exactly. So one day maybe I would put the whole thing up on GitHub. It's a private repo at the moment, but maybe one day, probably when I can't work on it at all anymore, I'll just leave it up there in the public domain and people can do what they want with it. I mean, people can do what they want with it now, really. I mean, all the code is visible.
Yeah. So I can download it from Share and I can go and extend it to my own needs.
Yes, anyone can do that realistically if they want to. It's fairly complicated how it all kind of ties together in the back end, but there's plenty of ServiceNow people way smarter than me out there that could pick it up and do all kinds of crazy things with it, I reckon.
I did try and I thought, well, let me try and run this through the Discode application scanner that I'm working on as a little pet project. But because it's in global, I daredn't scan global. I'm worried about bringing my PDI down. So
Yeah,
I haven't done that.
but there's
yet.
a lot of there's a lot of API that's not documented that was used.
Okay. So there's no
And there's
support
some,
offered here at all unless we buy you a coffee, right? If
yeah, pretty much. Well, Slack is probably the best way to get my support, just by messaging me on Slack.
and then
But
buy you a coffee afterwards, right?
priority will go to Patreon supporters, of course. So let's just quickly go through a catalog item one. So I'll just use a catalog item that I used in one of my community demonstrations I did a while ago. Before we do that, I might just tinker with the properties a little bit. So let's go exhaustive this time, I think. Let's capture absolutely everything.
Is there any impact on performance while you're going through the forms? Have you noticed that it slows down a little bit? Anything like that?
There is a bit of a wait once you try and save the record, because it's got to do a bunch of stuff. And I guess when it loads the form, if you've got it active, there's some stuff that goes on. But it's really only on submission there's a bit of a slight delay.
That's to be expected, though, right? You're carrying that weight to save yourself some time, but
yeah, that's absolutely it. So I'm just setting exhaustive. This slowness is because it's a PDI. So let's impersonate as well, because doing a test as admin isn't really a good idea. It's not realistic. So how about ITIL user? Let's go with ITIL user.
So you've set your recording on first and then impersonated, or you've enabled ITIL to be able to record?
So you've just caught me out there because I forgot to hit record.
Is it like doing debug, right? When you go debug security rules, it still knows that you're really in the session behind it.
Yeah, it kind of does. It's kind of the way a lot of the recording that's going on is all stored in session variables. But for some reason, ServiceNow doesn't clear those session variables when you impersonate someone. So all the recording data can sit persistent in memory, and you can impersonate whoever you want. And you don't have to worry about them needing to have access to run the recorder.
Session variables are fine for something like this, right? It makes perfect sense, but don't build things that are sensitive into session variables, right? They can be accessed through the browser. I've done some funky stuff with session variables a long time ago, and I don't think I'd recommend it. It was a very necessary situation that probably in the end turned out not to be necessary. But it felt necessary.
Let's just say don't try this at home.
Yeah. Session variables are fun though. You can play around with them, but they're accessible to the browser.
Yes.
And you can change them through like JavaScript console, etc.
Yeah. So. Yeah, absolutely spot on. So you could mess with this recorder and completely stuff it up if you really wanted to. It's just for recording things like when did the recording start, what level of recording. It's pulled in the appropriate system properties and cached them. So if someone else changes them during your recording, it still has the same settings, and it keeps track of every record that was opened and a bunch of other stuff as well. I wanted to make sure I wasn't using any custom tables, since ServiceNow's licensing has changed somewhat to now you have to use custom tables with caution, depending on what license agreement you're on, of course. So anyway, I'm ITIL now. I hit the recording, I'll just refresh this catalog item, order whiteboard markers.
Does on form load, is that a trigger to write to the recording as well,
So
or is it just to get ATF?
It's just as a check, like am I recording on a table that's supported? So view test. So ITIL user won't be able to see this, but I do have another window that has another session open. I can find where it has gone to.
Oh, they won't be able to view the tests that you're creating, so you can't track them as you're going along, right? You need a
here it is.
Incognito window.
Yeah. So I've got another session open here. So another way I like to demo this is just to do a bit of a split screen. That was some work I was doing today. Very small, side by side. So this time I'm my ITIL user. Just gonna fill out some stuff. Justification. So there's a few different variables. We've got raise fors read only. That's mandatory. That's mandatory. So let's just put some stuff in.
Just thinking here, does it work with UI pages, things like taking assessments, taking surveys?
It's just catalog items and glide records, glide form.
So that's because I guess of the way you've exposed the functionality, that you can't go and put it on every UI page because it just wouldn't be there. But it
relies on the glide form API.
Okay. So it doesn't know what's been submitted. So if you've submitted a record and created a record on the server, I'm just thinking when you take a survey or an assessment, then it creates lots of other records. I don't know how much you know about the assessment instance kind of data model there.
It's hard. It's hard to report on.
It's hard to report on. It's fun to play with. Let's put it that way. So at the point that it's saved it to the server, you're not getting hold of that. You're doing it all in the client side, right?
Yeah, essentially. There is some stuff that happens on the back end, but not much. It's pretty much entirely just passing data from the client and then processing it and turning it into test steps. So I've got this on the right just to show what just happened. So maybe I'll go back just so people can see the form. It detected that I was ITIL user, that I was using the order whiteboard markers in service portal. So we'll pick up the service portal you're using, pick up the catalog item, pick up the variables that change value, which is sorted justification. It will validate all the read-only variables. So there it's checking raise for is ITIL user, and then it's just doing the variable state validation of absolutely all the variables that were there. What was visible, what was hidden, what was read-only, what was mandatory, all that kind of thing. And then picked up that I ordered it. So it's somewhat limited in what it can pick up on. It's only just picks up on ordering, doesn't pick up on quantity or anything too fancy. It's just kind of the bare bones. Does this item work? Can I order it? Don't care so much about quantity because that's pretty out of the box. Quantity is always going to work, one would hope.
So
and
that's catalog item in the portal, and I think from what I'm gleaning from like the conversation on the chat, that's a tricky area to build your test for. So this is really great stuff for people that obviously are using a lot of catalog items on the portal. There's other places on the portal that need testing sometimes, right? The actual glide glide record, so viewing the task or maybe doing something with a task on the portal. Is any of that available here, or is it only catalog items in portal?
It's only catalog items is all I've built. I
Okay.
haven't looked into like checking an incident view, for example. I just kind of focused on the areas that I found that I needed to test, and that's
Sure.
what I built for.
Yeah, no, and it sounds like that's for a lot of people. That's probably the main use case for the portal. I'm just thinking of other cases that, you know, things I've
Yeah.
seen where the portal's more than just catalog. That's why I was asking about taking assessments. That's something that you know, does happen in the portal. So I need to get a pop filter.
And
I think every time I say
yeah,
portal.
Yeah. You can use ATF to do those things. You just can't use Regress to automate it.
At the moment.
At the moment. Yeah. Yeah, let's go with that. So just continuing on where I was before as well. Sometimes you might want to do the whole end-to-end process, including this particular workflow. I don't think I built approvals into. It does handle approvals, but only in the back end, not through Service Portal. I've got the request here that I opened, that I raised the catalog item from. So I can go into this and just
so did you
save
just
the record.
Re-impersonate? So you went in as ITIL user, submitted a catalog item, and have you now impersonated a different user to go and do the approval? Yeah, is that?
I could well do that. In this case, this workflow doesn't have an approver, so it's just still using the ITIL user, but it's just showing you guys that it's automatically related that record here to test step 6.
So the thing that was submitted, the thing that was submitted actually got generated something valid as a result of it.
Yeah. And then it's just gone and done the exhaustive testing on the form. So this is where you can really see how exhaustive can be. There's a lot of UI actions that are not visible because there's a lot of potential UI actions in there.
So it knows what is available on the table and says, here's all the ones on the table, but these ones are not visible.
Yeah, that's it. So look up all UI actions on task or the whole kind of table hierarchy that are active. And if they're not visible, then they must be hidden.
So it's not checking the condition. It's not checking that they...
It's logically deduced because you can't check that something isn't there if it's not there unless you know it's not supposed to be there.
Yeah. It's a can of worms, this stuff. There's some good stuff coming into the chat about so Mark said nice with the notification checks. Okay, so that's getting some love. I'm not sure exactly which point Ashley was referring to when this came up, so that might have been about notifications, but just generally, I guess, around citizen development. Those who need ATF for their service catalog but don't know how to use ATF. So I think this is maybe around the fact that this is a biggest use case for ATF and the ability to leverage regress.
Yeah, absolutely.
Catalog items are like probably, you know, on the Pareto analysis.
So one of the features I do have on the backlog that I sometimes, like, I might be having a shower or something and I just think, like, what if I built this feature kind of thing? And one of the things that occurred to me was that I could build a silent recorder for catalog, and then you could just have it running and people wouldn't even know that ATF tests are being generated. Wouldn't that be something? So that's one of the things I had in my backlog, a silent recorder.
So something that's sitting there and you just say to everyone, look, go and play with the portal for or the catalog, whatever, for, you know, the next half an hour or 2 hours or the whole day, and then you just gather all of the tests, all of the types of things that were generated, and back kind of
Yeah,
record
and
them.
then
Yeah, turn them into tests.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's going
So
to
that
get you some real good meaty or high in protein results that you can then turn into something useful, I guess. But you might get a bit of noise there.
yeah, you probably would get a bit of noise. So let's just see if how well this is working. This is the instance I actually built the app in. So sometimes if I'm like in the middle of building a feature, something might be broken. But I think it all seems to be working pretty well at the moment. So I just went into a catalog task. I could change a variable. Let's just change the preferred color to black, for example. Close the task. Now we've got 21 steps. So validate there is at least, looks like it's all working. So the recorder keeps track of every record that you take a snapshot of. And if you open, every time you open a record, it just scans the whole thing for reference fields. And if it finds one that's kind of in the history of records you've gone to, it picks it up and just substitutes it with a test step marker. So I guess for every record you open and that test step has a output of a record, it keeps this big list of records and test step markers so it can refer back to them in related records.
So it knows that. So it's
so
referential.
it knows.
It's not hard coded value. It's the record that was in test 3 or the one that was generated in step 4.
That's it. So I went to a task and it's just picked up that parent and request item, both those fields were the request item of the catalog task. So it's just linked it to step 13. Just the way I coded it was just look at the last UI action with that output and link it up. So it's just done that. So when I clicked UI action step 13, that was the UI action of the RATM. And I've also got on top of that, there's also a record likeness algorithm as well that also adds the values of particular fields that are in I think it's in the, based on what was mandatory, I think it was. Is description even mandatory here? It doesn't even fulfill order as request. I think on the RATM, and then we go to the catalog task.
Is the description populated but not visible? Oh, it's there.
Description.
Okay.
It's there. It's been a very long time since I built a lot of this functionality because I actually started building this tool like probably 2 or 3 years ago. So in the settings, you can configure what fields you would consider for likeness. So if you open an existing record, rather than it trying to pick that static record that might not exist when you run the test, it just builds a likeness query of, I want to get a record that was like this one that I was recording, because chances are that record will have gone by the time you run the test again for reusability. In this case, it's not really necessary because it's picked up the existing record, so you could just get rid of those. But if it didn't pick up the reference, if I just opened a random catalog task, it would just put in here, give me a record that has a description of that and a state of that. If anything that I'm saying makes sense, it's complicated.
It sounds like you've thought about so many different angles and problems, and I guess that only comes from using ATF.
Yeah,
quite
it was
heavily.
something I didn't even consider when I was building a recorder, that you don't want to literally say I opened incident 10001 because that incident isn't going to exist in half your systems.
We
What
shouldn't
you
be.
want to do is say, I want an incident that is as similar to that as possible
Yeah.
based on certain criteria.
We shouldn't be hard coding sysids, right? And that's effectively what happens
Yeah.
if you've got the reference. So, and that can bite
Yeah,
us in testing as well, because
absolutely.
your test fails, but actually everything was good. It's just that record, that specific record, doesn't exist. I'm a bit conscious of time, Paul. I think there's one more question that we can probably get to, because I mean this looks amazing. I don't know if you're getting that from my, like, I just keep asking more and more questions, and does this work? What about this? I'm excited about this. It's amazing, and thank you for making it available to people. Of course. So Mark has said, maybe I missed it. I think we did touch on this, but what if you build custom test steps like they shared in the Creator Toolbox or Platform Academy from the past 2 weeks? I don't know the references of those Creator Toolboxes, but if you're...
I think I need to check that out as well, because I've been meaning to create some custom test steps myself, but I haven't got around to it.
What,
There was
what I was
like
going
I wanted
to...
to
Go on, sorry.
I wanted to build one that was just auto-populate all mandatory fields, because sometimes in a test you don't care about what fields are mandatory, but one additional mandatory field can just stuff up all your tests because you haven't built
Yeah, you've not populated the record. It's not...
you haven't built that into your test. So a test step just says, I don't care, just populate the field enough for me to be able to submit it. But I just never got around to doing it.
Yeah, if anyone's ever watched a developer do a demo,
Yeah.
it might be FFFF, or it might be XC or whatever. No one cares what real values are in there. We just want to get through the process. Just let me get this record created and move to the next step, because that's where the fun is. So yeah, being able to just pre-populate mandatory fields, I think sounds like a real valid use case from testing, because yeah, the records get deleted afterwards anyway. So my question is, based on Mark's question, if I built a custom step, or if I've got something that I think is really necessary for me in Regress,
Yep.
where would I start if I wanted to go in there? Like, where's the starting point to extend? Because I looked at the script includes that are listed on Share. You've got quite a few of them, which is...
there's a lot of them. There's essentially a script include for every test step.
Okay.
Basically.
I think that's great,
and
because you then don't break other stuff.
yeah, there is some that are very common and they inherit. Some of them are so similar they just extend each other with a few other bits and pieces. But this is the kind of stuff I like to hear, because this is really kind of going more deep into the architecture of it as well. So I've got all these, it's all based on test templates. So I've got all these different test templates, pretty much one test template for every scenario. I didn't want to hard code this. I wanted to use out of the box tables. There's some different ones for different versions and such. Like I've got one for multi-row variable sets. Didn't cover that. It does capture populating multi-row variable sets. Nothing too tricky, like removing them, just like adding them for your basic kind of test. When I was in the incident before, creating a new record or just opening an existing record, all kinds of things. We could go into, well, we just showed service catalog. So when I was just in the service catalog, SP, when it does its server-side processing, it decides what scenario am I in, and it will work out that I'm in the scenario of a catalog item in Service Portal, and it just generates using mostly out-of-the-box code. Actually, it just applies this test template to the test, these test steps in this order. So if you had a custom test step that you wanted to add in, you could come in here and you can just add it in there. And then there's only 2 scripts that you need to update. If I can find them. generator in it.
So those test templates are out of the box ATF stuff. So you use them to create common journeys in ATF that say, your default baseline: impersonate user, create new record, click UI action. Right, that might be a test template. You've built test templates for different types of recordings that you like, common journeys.
This is a good way to understand what Regress can do. You come in here and it can only do what's in here.
Okay.
Anything outside of here, it doesn't do. So
and that's based on the application equals regress. Oh, premium. So is that scoped? But
it's a global app, so it's all packaged in an app. It's just not scoped.
I've not played around with global scoped apps.
It still has an application, and for a start, within an application scope, you can't create a test record. So that just makes it straight away impossible.
Got to be global, right?
App. Yeah, and you can change the permissions, but you're not supposed to do that in a store app. You have to assume out of the box configuration. So from the start, this could never be a scoped app on the store, just purely for that reason, straight up, let alone all the other complications. Anyway, I was trying to, of course, they've all got the word generator in them, but the monster here, test step generator, it's probably going to take a while to load because it's really big.
That message at the top, warning, this record has also been modified by open update set. Where's that coming from?
Yeah. That's a little utility I built to stop me from putting things in the wrong update set. Basically, it just checks for any open update sets. And if the record you have opened is in another open update set, it just tells you. So you try and keep your things in only one open update set at a time, so someone doesn't accidentally pull something you're working on to another environment. Anyway, so there's this I'm using a lot of system properties here. I actually did have someone ran like a best practice scan and pulled me up on it and said, can you please replace your sysid with system properties? So I personally, controversially, maybe think that, I know hard coding sysid is a bad idea most of the time, but sometimes there's nothing wrong with it. In my opinion, test steps will have the same sysid in every system, in every instance in the world, unless they're a custom one. It's always the same. It's never going to change, ever. So it's just kind of like pointless busy work to me. But I did it anyway.
So you're going to get you're getting a property to get a sysid that's never going to change. So you've actually added kind of extra processing when it might not be necessary. So one best practice is kind of causing you to affect on other best practices there in some way.
Yes, I call it sometimes I feel like when a best practice is misused, it becomes an anti-pattern. If you've heard of the concept of their software patterns and software anti-patterns, where anti-patterns are generally things that people think are good that are actually bad. I think best practices can sometimes be a hindrance rather than a help if you don't understand why it's there. We know why it's there is that sometimes records have different system IDs in different systems, so you don't want to hard code it. You want to make it so it can be changed via a property or something, right? But when it's always going to be the same, like there's just no point in my view.
In ESLint, right? I don't know if you mess around with linting at all, ESLint, and creating your own style guides and stuff like that. But you can kind of define a rule. For instance, you might say camel case, and then you might have something that is not camel case. And what you can do in ESLint, at least this is in VS Code, I don't know about it elsewhere, but you can kind of comment and say, ignore the next line, because I'm going to break the rules now, and I'm going to document why I'm breaking the rules. It's okay. Generally, I want my style to be like this, but right now I'm going to wear a different color hat. for this requirement. So it would be good if instant scan. I don't know if this is possible yet, but it'd be good if you could excuse yourself in some way on comments and then say, look, I know hard coding sysids is bad, but please ignore the next 10 lines because I'm going to do it for this reason.
Yeah, I like that, because you see how many system properties I've had to create. These sysids are the same in every ServiceNow instance in the world, right? So
one benefit though of the property
changing.
there is they get cached, right? So I guess in some way you
maybe there is an argument to be had on that level.
Yeah, we need someone like Travis Tolson to come in and get his calculator out.
I'm more than happy to be challenged on any of the views I have, because I know there are a lot of people that are a lot smarter than me in the ServiceNow ecosystem, and I'm more than happy to be gently corrected. It's just my opinion.
I know what you mean, though. It's about it can end up being counterproductive. You're like following all the rules blindly because there's an impact here, and it's counterproductive. I'm curious why you set your constants that way, and not within the object. You're doing it with all of them. Okay, so you're not using the standard pattern for the script includes, right?
I'm not actually. I think it's just one of those things where I just always did it that way for some reason. It's might be bad. I don't know. It's just
I don't know if it's good or bad. I think you can't extend this script include in the same way that you can use like class.create and objects extends objects.
Yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
probably because I have actually ran into that before. Even with some out of the box stuff, some ServiceNow out of the box stuff that declared it in the same kind of way.
Kind of like static methods that aren't
available. I understand. Yeah, when it traverses all the functions through the extension, it doesn't grab those. Yes,
it's fine though if you do it by design. There's not only one.
Yeah, you don't
method.
need to refer to these outside.
Sometimes what I do, I create a core. I know we're gonna get too deep and run out of time. We're supposed to be doing this in an hour. Right? I've got some food to put on the barbecue. I was just thinking that there are other ways of doing script includes, and if you go to codecreative.io, you'll find that Travis has explained quite a few of them on.
I do use a singleton pattern for the object that contains everything about the recording. That's a singleton object.
Okay.
Because I only want one instance of it at any time. That's slightly going off topic again. So basically, if you've got a custom test step, this get test step worker method here, it's called from code that just cycles through the test template that I showed you before. And it's just saying, if the test is a impersonate user test, run this code. If it's create user, run this code. And if it's the depreciated record query or record query, you run this bit of code. So all you need to do is add in your own one here for your custom test step. And all these also extend the base class, which just has a bunch of common functions to do a bunch of stuff. Most of it is just find me the last test step of a particular type or range of test steps and doing some other stuff. So maybe we'll just let's just go like create new user. And I don't pretend to be a amazing coder if some of this code burns your eyes.
I'm enjoying it actually. I mean, everyone's got their opinion on it. I think the main thing is to have a convention and kind of stick to it. It's if you're building your own app, you can do what you want, right? But as long as your app is kind of consistent between different things, it's fine, right? But if you're working in an organization, then you really want to be able to work collaboratively with your colleagues, and I think you do need to have a convention there. But if you've got one bit of code in your app and then another bit of code over there written completely differently, it becomes harder to read. You know,
consistency is the main thing. Having a defined standard and having everyone follow it.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a fan. It works. It looks like it's amazing. Who am I to
Yeah.
criticize
So
anyone's code anyway?
all you need to do is you create your own script include that extends test step generator. You do a check. So when your custom test step comes up, it does your thing. And then you just kind of set up the step as you want.
And
so
a lot of these methods here, this .gr ATF step is the core ATF API stuff that you're using, or?
Yeah, so the test step generator object has a class variable, I guess you could call it, called GIATF test step, which is just what the current test step is. And it has, see if I have it referenced here. I don't have it referenced in this one. There's another object called regression object, which just contains everything that was sent from the user interface or the calling code up into it. So you just have a generate test step, and then you just put whatever code you need in.
So I think that
Bob's your uncle.
that's. I mean, that should answer Mark's question. I think, if in terms of can you build custom steps? Yes, but then or can you record custom steps? Yes, but only within the limitations of what is possible from recording wise. Anyway, like you said, virtual agent might not be. Some of the things you just haven't built because it's the right click context menu stuff, client callable ones in there, something like that.
Yeah,
so
can't reverse engineer everything.
Yeah,
but
so within those
the
constraints,
architecture is extendable. I needed to make this maintainable.
I saw some of the latest release notes. It said that refactoring to.
Yeah, there were one or two like almost complete rewrites where it was just like, this is a mess, I need to fix it. And I would just kind of restructure the whole thing. But I'm fairly happy with where I landed on the architecture. Some of the client stuff I'm not 100% happy with, but there are some limitations around extending classes in JavaScript that ServiceNow just does some really bizarre things that I wouldn't expect.
Like what? Just as an example, off the top of your head.
Just not inherit methods that I was expecting it to in Service Portal. So I had like I had like two monstrous UI scripts, and I wanted to separate them so there was kind of like a base UI script, and then every user interface just extended it, and then I could just override the methods as I needed to, as I had different HTML structures and whatnot. And I just kept facing an issue in Service Portal where it would load a script include before its base script include, and then when it tried to extend it, it couldn't find it, and then the whole thing just went nope. And then some other cases where it wasn't picking the override method, and unfortunately I'm not strong enough in JavaScript, I think, to get to the bottom of it, but I eventually kind of cobbled it together, and that's why you have to add free UI scripts to your to the Service Portal theme to get that to work. It's a bit of a mess.
I saw that as well. That's necessary to make it work. So, yeah, that's. I mean, if I get stuck on something in JavaScript, I'd put a breakpoint in and just go click debugger and follow it, and then get lost. The stuff you've said there, I've not experienced that, so sounds a bit scary. Shall we go back to? Is there anything else you want to show? Because I'm just conscious of time, and I think
absolutely. For me, my work day's finished, and for you, it's in the middle of the day.
I've got the day off today. I've got the day off.
I don't feel so bad anymore.
No, it's all right. You just, I think it was great that we were able to do this, because I know we've been talking about trying to do this for a while, and the thing that I took the day off for no longer needs to happen. So I had a free day, so it was really good timing,
Perfect.
because anytime I looked at doing something out of hours, like would have been 1-2 a.m. for you, or it would have meant me getting up
Yeah.
at 5 a.m. to do the session. So this worked
I guess
perfectly.
perhaps if I was to summarize, I showed, well, to what you get on the share version versus what you get in the Patreon version. You've got the guided setup that takes you through the whole setup. And this also includes a lot of nice things as well. Like some people have got lost and stuck trying to get this working for Service Catalog and Service Portal, because there's some steps you need to take, but within the guided setup, I've got some fixed scripts and some filters and stuff that just make it work for all your catalog items in all your portal just by running a script. And it just takes you through kind of how to use it for some basic use cases as well. So you get that. You get the notification recording that I showed at the very start, checking your email notifications that get sent. Sometimes that's good just to understand what notifications are getting sent out. It's pretty hard to reverse engineer, but you can create an incident and go all the way through to closure and then stop the recording, and you can see every single email that gets sent out and who it goes to, what notifications get fired.
That's a premium feature, is it? That recording?
Flow Designer, yep, that's a premium thing. And then the other one was the create user step that I showed at the start, where it mimics whoever you were impersonating at the time in a create user step. So which one would that have been? 2 hours ago, hour ago. I think it was probably this one. I never actually went into it just to show exactly how it works. So I just put regress in front of it and take the first name, last name, bunch of field values, good for testing your VIP users as an example. Title, ServiceNow dude, the roles and the groups, and impersonate. So I guess those are the key 3 Patreon features, and you get to vote on what features you want to see next as well.
Sounds good. Paul, let me just check on the settings. Yeah, I've got the link in the description for the website, right? Regress-atf-recorder.com. So
yeah,
anyone who is interested and wants to know more, then you can get to the link directly from the description, and this is the page, and you've got the Patreon links there.
You can always shout me a coffee if you're not willing to go all in.
Is there any benefit
good.
that, or is that just literally like, I'll buy you a coffee, mate? There you go, thanks.
Yeah. That's all it is. It's just saying thanks.
Yeah.
I guess, but obviously there's no obligations. So, this just covers some of the basic web hosting and gets me some good feedback on particular features and that kind of thing. So,
okay,
check it out.
That's really nice stuff. Thank you for joining us on the channel. Should we stop the share and just close out? Because I want to know. Obviously, we've talked about the intros, your backstory, how you kind of got into. How do I hide the participants view there? There we go. How you got into ServiceNow? Where you first started. And then we talked a lot about Regress ATF. I just wanted to find out and make sure, beside Regress, is there anything else that you're doing, Paul, that is of interest that people might want to know about, or indeed you just want to plug? Any shameless plugs, any shout outs?
I am writing a blog article at the moment related to Service Catalog, and making variables mandatory on closure was something I was thinking about, just musing the other day. It's a pretty common kind of service catalog requirement where you've got your variables and you populate your variable in a certain value, and then that determines what task gets generated next. But there wasn't really a clean way out of the box to say, I want this variable to be mandatory on task closure. And every time I looked on the forum or asked my own developer cohort how they did it, everyone has a slightly different way. And I've seen some of the other MVPs as well post different solutions as well. I'm like, everyone has a completely different solution for this. And I've never seen a customer not have this requirement that has a service catalog. So I find that quite interesting. So I'm writing a blog about that in the community forum, which I'm about 65% written. That's the only really other thing that I'm actively working on. I started a few days ago. I just was doing some service catalog stuff for a customer, and then I just get these random bits of inspiration. And then I'm like, I really want to write about this, and go home and start writing about it. I assume it's probably the same for a lot of the MVPs that put, like, I'm sure Mark must have these moments of inspiration every 5 minutes with
I think he
the amount of blog
he
posts.
must be using some kind of automated blog writer. I mean, the guy's output is ridiculous in terms of the amount of output that comes from Mark on the various different topics. Like, I've talked to him on instant scan. He's talking about virtual agent, UI actions on a form now. I don't know where. It's an absolute machine, that guy. I think any blog post I've ever written is probably about 65% finished. Like, I can't finish them. That's why I do this channel. It's literally press go live, just see what happens, and it counts as content. And, I get a sticker. So
I do know what you mean. Like, I wrote half the blog in one night, and then it's like, it's so close to finishing it, but you just sometimes you just completely lose motivation in something that was fascinating one day, and the next day you're just completely ambivalent about it.
Yeah, and I think that I'm too particular to write stuff. Like, I love the English language. I love other languages as well, but I love like the power of word. And I would spend ages getting one sentence right. Rethinking that one sentence, and then the whole thing is just I lose.
Yeah,
lose the point.
I guess when you're a written content creator, the really important skill to learn is when to let go. Like, you can never get anything 100%, and sometimes you just have to release it, even if it's not perfect. Otherwise, you never get anything done.
Yeah, and move on. And I think
otherwise, Regress would never have been released. I still would be like not happy with something.
Yeah.
At one point, you just have to get it out there.
So
it's really hard to let go sometimes.
Take an agile approach to writing content as well.
Yeah.
One thing I learned actually was
minimal viable product.
Exactly. Yeah, just get it out there. I mean, you want to make sure it's kind of factually correct. I guess you're not giving people kind of any bad advice or telling people something that's wrong. But one thing that I got taught when I was first starting my career, and it was about writing or delivering presentations. So, go away, do a presentation, come back, present it to the class, and get some feedback. And you find out that you spent the whole time playing with coins in your pocket or clicking the pen. You get that kind of feedback. But the one thing that was taught to me was,
you can't say I've been playing with this the whole time.
You can't see. It's fine. These Zoom Zoom things are fine. The one thing was, don't get it right, get it written. That was the advice that I was given. So that means you've got something on the page. Yeah.
I think that's good advice.
And, well, maybe we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Paul,
on that note.
Yeah, on that note, killed it. Killed the vibe. Thanks to everyone that's tuned in. Paul, thank you very much for coming on the channel. Really enjoyed that. And I think Regress, I've got it on my PDI. I'm definitely going to be playing with that a bit more. And I know that from the people that were on the chat, there's a lot of people that are interested in this stuff, and it could be very helpful. What's next for it? Final thought. What's next?
It's a good question. We'll see how the Patreon goes.
There we go.
For inspiration, because I know the ServiceNow space moves so quickly. Next thing you know, no one will be using UI 16, and Service Portal will be a thing of the past, and everyone will have fandangled UI Builder stuff. And
it's now
like
experience on the backlog, then, is it?
It only has a certain shelf life, really. So in UI 16 and Service Portal catalog items. So we'll just see how it goes, I guess. It's been pretty quiet lately, so it would be good to see more interest in it, I guess, because like it's hard to be motivated to work on it when like no one's interested in it, kind of thing. So show your interest, otherwise it will probably just kind of stagnate, I guess.
That's fair enough, I think. So we've got the link in the description, regress-atf-recorder.com. You can go on there, join Paul's Patreon, and then you can hit him up for support, ideas, feedback, and get some premium features as well. So Paul, thank you very much for joining me on the channel. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out the SN Dev Slack channel as well if you need any assistance in the ServiceNow space. And you know, you can hunt down somebody that might be able to get you a sticker, but I think they're all gone. We're very lucky. We just need some swag now. Shout to
Have
Brad.
you got your swag?
No, that's all the 2020 stuff, isn't it? So 2021, I think I'll get it next year. But just shout to Brad, because I know he's enjoying the continuous.
Oh, mine got accidentally put with the employee MVP stuff, so it only just got sent yesterday.
For last year, though.
For last year, yeah.
Excellent.
Everyone's received theirs except mine because they accidentally didn't post it. I'll have it soon.
I'm not going to comment on that, but you know,
yeah.
It's great. It's great being part of this cohort, and really enjoyed the show. Thank you. And there's a live coding happy hour later. I can't remember what it is exactly. Is it lady coding? I'm not sure. But
I think it might be. Yeah. I saw something about that.
I can't remember the date. So the 15th. Yeah. So everyone, check out this ServiceNow Dev channel as well. Let's wrap it up, because otherwise we'll keep talking. Thank you so much, Paul. Take care. And everyone, please stay safe.
No worries. Thanks for hosting me at this odd time for you.
No problem. I think it was a good time for everyone else. Thank you.